William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Good morning. How is everybody? A lot of people are looking at me like, who's this young whippersnapper and why is he up there? I was getting some food and somebody said, you're not old enough to be here. And I said, aren't we all old at heart though? Thank you for laughing. Thank you for laughing. I was worried about that joke. Welcome to the first summit on LGBT aging here in Dallas. It's a very, very exciting day. And not just exciting, but it's historic. I don't know how many of you would have ever imagined a day where a group of people who have grown up through an era and suffered and prevailed to come together to say, we are now at a stage in our life where we need to talk about our needs. And especially here in Dallas, it's encouraging to me, somebody that looks forward to living a long and healthy life, but also a reminder of the not just the struggles, but the sacrifices that were made for my generation and for my friends, and also for the generations that are coming up. So thank you, not just for the work that you've done, but for the work that you continue to do, and for joining us today at this summit to find out how best to serve each other, as well as to build a strong network and a strong pipeline for the future generations. So I know y'all continue to do amazing work. So a big round of applause just for all of y'all for being here. This is what makes a community great. So my name is Yazdanpanah. I am the Director of Special Projects at an organization called Commit here in town. And I'm sure, like many of you, I was invited by Candace Flowers. And what's amazing was we were sitting down at dinner, and he started telling me about his friends and about some different things. And he said, you know, Christian, for a lot of us who are starting to think about where we are not just retiring, but if we need housing or financial or legal consultation, if we need healthcare, things like that, there's not a lot of answers. And what really stuck out to me was he goes, in a lot of situations, what we find is that people who sacrifice and have given their time and a lot of times their lives find themselves going into housing care facilities and almost have to go back into the closet. And I said, no. No. Because if there's one thing that I know is that whether it was the civil rights or the Stonewall fighters, it's that there were people that were fighting for the younger generations, and they deserve the same respect as everyone else. And I said, Candace, what can I do? And I said, Candace, what can I do? And he said, Christian, I want to have a summit, and I need somebody to come see it because I'm bound to forget a ton of stuff. So I need somebody like you to come in and help make sure that we remember everything and that have a lot of energy. So I said, whatever you need, you just let me know. And so this summit really came together as part of an invitation that Candace had to the White House. By the invitation of President Obama's staff, there was a summit on LGBT housing. And this was back in February. And when he came back, he said, he came back not just with a lot of energy, but with a lot of great ideas. And he said, we need to have a call to arms in this community, in Dallas, right now. And we cannot wait, because nobody's waiting for these people. So we have to do it. And this is actually part of a larger national conversation. Today we are using the hashtag, and I'm sure a lot of you know what the hashtags are. We're using the hashtag LGBT aging. And if you want to take pictures, post it on Facebook, please do. For two reasons. One is because this is part of a national conversation. And second, we want to show the rest of the country that Dallas is showing up to the conversation and is bringing ideas to the table. And not just ideas, but also solutions. Because today is about coming up with ideas that will turn into those solutions. So please utilize those. And what's amazing is we see the national leadership through President Obama really making strides. We also have local leadership here in town. I want to welcome District 2 Councilman Adam Medrano, who serves on, and not just serves, but actually leads and chairs the the LGBT task force. He's a little tired. He was up all night. As many of you may know, there was some difficulties and shootings at the PD headquarters. That's actually his district. But he is an amazing individual that's really leading the community and is here to listen and to help be part of the solution. Councilman Medrano.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. I have been up all night. That's the good thing is that none of our police officers, no one was injured in that incident. So that's the good thing, and so we're all blessed about that. So, but I am the chair of the LGBT task force for the city of Dallas, and if there's anyone here, and I see a few that are part of the task force, would you please stand up? Thank you. In this last, I guess my first term, these last couple of years, we've been able to make huge strides towards equality at City Hall. When I first got there and took over the task force, we started discussions on the FMLA policy. So if someone's partner got sick, that you weren't protected, you could lose your job. So we corrected that. So that's one of the things that we corrected. We also corrected the pension benefits, expanding them to same-sex couples, the police, fire, and then also the civilian employees. So that was able to be done. And this wouldn't have been done without the task force and the resolution we passed at City Hall. So that's why every time I get up here, I have the best task force in the city. And so we have great people passionate about making sure that everybody's treated fairly in the city of Dallas. And so I always want to give you guys a shout out and thank you for everything that you've done to help me be successful in leading the council towards those decisions. But today, we begin a conversation of the utmost importance, aging in the LGBT community. So first of all, I want to congratulate everybody for being here this morning, and this marks the first ever conversation on aging in the LGBT community here in the city of Dallas. Before I begin, I definitely want to give a round of applause to, again, Cannon Flowers and Candace Thompson for bringing this and doing all the work to put this together. So we give them a round of applause. Thank you. This subject is one that will affect Dallas and the United States for the next 4 to 5 decades. So it's vital that we take action now to ensure that the needs of the LGBT community are met in the future. We have to do the work necessary to guarantee that current practices do not exclude senior LGBT individuals. We need to work with the various LGBT organizations in North Texas to provide age-friendly, inclusive services for everyone. So that our goal here today is to brainstorm and to have a think tank. Cannon will pass on an executive summary to me, and we'll explore the opportunities to partner with the public and private sectors to make this progress on this topic a reality. Thank you again for being here, and I'm so glad to be a part of the first ever LGBT Summit on Aging. So again, Cannon, thank you for inviting me here. And if anybody knows me, I'm very passionate about our youth, but also our seniors. I do a lot of work for kids in my community. I was on the school board for 8 years. So that's something I'm very passionate, but also seniors, because as I knock on doors or I'm at community meetings, oftentimes we look and our seniors are forgotten about, and they need to be educated on services that that are there for them when they're in need. And that should be every senior, including the LGBT community. So again, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Medrano. And please try to invite him to your meetings, especially on Saturdays, because sometimes we play basketball and he's really good and I have to cover him. So make sure he's busy on Saturdays. So, hey, Adam, I think you took my notes. I might need to. I'm telling you, he's just like that on the basketball court. He steals everything. No, he really is a great councilman, and we need people like him. So if you're in his district, he's not up for election, but always make sure to tell your friends and keep them engaged. And so this coalition came together, the Coalition for Aging LGBT, with Cannon and also Candace, really co-chairing it. And so when the summit started, the idea of the summit started happening, I said, all right, well, how's this going to happen? And he said, you know what? I know. We're going to call Sarah Whitby over at the senior source. And Sarah, are you here? Sarah, really quick, raise your hand. A big round of applause for Sarah. He said, we want to have this summit, and we want to do it on a Saturday. Can we steal one of your Saturdays? And she said, absolutely. Anything that we can do, we're here. So thank you to the senior source. Thank you to Sarah for doing it. And then I said, well, Candace, you know, you're going to need some food, because people are hungry, and you're bound to have a lot more people if you have food. And he said, oh, okay. So he said, let me talk to my friends over at Land Illegal. And so Omar Navarez, are you here, Omar? Omar from Lambda Legal provided the breakfast. He was just telling me he was up all night preparing the bread and picking the fruit. That's why you were up all night, right? Not for any other reasons. Okay. And this really came together as a team, and people started pitching in and helping. And so it was great to kind of see the energy come from DC, come to Dallas, and really start coming together. And part of the day of what the outcome wanted to be is that it was really about bringing in the leaders in different areas, whether it be in housing, in healthcare, in advocacy, in social engagement, financial and legal services. So we're going to have presenters come up here shortly. But before that, what I wanted to do was introduce Candace to come up and share a couple of important notes. So our co-chair, Candace Thompson.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, I just want to say a special thank you to each of you for being present today. It is a Saturday morning, and you could be at home in your beds asleep, turning over, drinking coffee, but yet you choose to be here with us today to discuss this important topic. I'd also like to say a special thank you to the volunteers who came early this morning with me to help set up the room and get everything coordinated so that this could be pulled off today. So thank you, volunteers, and you're also my friends and my family, so thank you for that. So I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So we have restrooms. Men's restrooms is right out this door here on my right, your left, and women's are right outside of here on my left, your right. And so feel free to get up and move about as you need to. And then also, I apologize, but we were a little late with getting the photo releases. But so Washington wants to hear from us and know what we're doing and know the success of this program today. So we're asking each and every one of you, if you could please sign our photo release. They're right outside at the registration tables now. I apologize again because they're late. But if you can just sign your name so we can, we have the proof that you gave your permission for us to take pictures of you here, because we're going to have some breakout sessions. And we just want to, capture the engagement that we have going on here today. Also, when you were at the registration table, you received an evaluation form. That evaluation form is going to be critical, for us to be able to gather the information of what we've learned here today and how we can move it forward. So if you could please, complete that evaluation form. It's less than 20 questions, and most of it's kind of multiple choice. So, you can work through it rather quickly, but, just give them back to me at the end, and greatly appreciate that. So, as Christian said, my name is Candace Thompson. By day, I'm the Director of Community Outreach for Jubilee Park and Community Center, which is over in East Dallas, right behind Fair Park. And love having Adam Medrano here with us. He's a great supporter of us there. And I'm very happy to see several of my church community family members here as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I would like to read to you, and some of you know Cannon. Many of you do know Cannon, and you know that he's up to a lot of good. I have known Cannon since I was 16. I consider that a blessing. I consider Cannon to be a mentor and a trailblazer. And so whenever he picks up the phone, sends a text or a message and says, "Hey, Candace, what do you think about this?" Or, would you, consider, doing this with me? I say yes. Every time it's going to be yes. And so to that, I would like to read to you the letter that he received from Washington in support of our movement today. Dated June 13th, 2015. On behalf of SAGE, which is Services and Advocacy for Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Elders, I am honored to extend my warmest greetings to all gathered for the Dallas Summit on LGBT Aging. Organized by the Coalition for Aging, LGBT, DFW, this summit is the brainchild of the esteemed Cannon Flowers, who attended the White House National LGBT Elder Housing Summit this past February, where apparently he got some big ideas for Dallas-Fort Worth. In just a few months, Cannon and the Coalition for Aging, LGBT, put together this remarkable event, exceeding their capacity goals and bringing much needed attention and awareness to LGBT aging issues and challenges in the state of Texas. This event brings together Dallas-Fort Worth LGBT, older adults, and community leaders to have a day-long conversation about aging, to begin to understand the size of the problem and to formulate a call to action. At the heart of the SAGE vision is maximizing the positive impact we make on behalf of LGBT older adults, and this assembly of passionate, caring people is just the group to do it. I commend the many coalition members, donors, volunteers, supporters, and participants of this landmark event. Congratulations, and I hope you have an amazing day and a productive summit. Sincerely, Serena Worthington, Director of National Field Initiatives. And with this said, please allow me to introduce Mr. Cannon Flowers. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. This is where I'm going to set the stage for why we're doing what we're doing, so get comfortable. I'm going to talk to you for the next 15 or 20 minutes. I want to step through to let you know how we got to where we are today. I had spent the first 25 years of my career at Texas Instruments doing corporate finance. I left that and for the next 10 years led a human rights organization where we provided legal services, social services to people seeking asylum in the U.S. After leaving that after a decade, I really wanted to focus back on the LGBT community. I had the background in corporate finance, I had the background in nonprofit management, and so I thought it was time to apply those skills to do something for our own community. And oftentimes I think you can relate to this, you're led to something sometimes that you never even had a clue was going to be part of your life. And so I kept hearing comments in our own community about aging and the needs for aging. And I couldn't find a focal point on who do we talk to about this. So it was isolated conversations. And I remember there's several of you in the room that have had conversations for the last 3 to 4 years. And it always boiled down to, if you're going to do something, just go do it. And so I thought, okay, well, we can go with this. Part of my human rights work was focused on immigration reform. So I spent a lot of time working with the White House team on immigration reform. I am in a binational relationship. So for the last 20 years, I have spoken on how immigration policy affects the LGBT community. A few years ago, Patty Fink and I were invited to the White House to discuss immigration and its impact. As I left that meeting several years ago, I told one of the president's staff, I'll be back in a few years to talk to you about aging. And I was really joking, but they didn't forget. And I'm going to show you how big the problem is for the United States and why our president and his team are concerned about this particular issue. If you look at the 2010 census for the state of Texas, there are approximately 371,000 people from the LGBT community. This is taking responses on the 2010 census and correlating that data with the Williams Institute at UCLA. So we know that there's roughly 371,000 people from the age of 45 to 85 in our community in the state of Texas. Of that 371, I wanted to understand how does that 45 to 85 break down. And as you can see, the largest sector there is 75,000 are in the 40 to 49 year range, all the way up to 85 plus, and we do know some of our dear friends who fall into this area, so there's roughly 13,000. And then taking it further, what does it mean for Dallas? Because that's where we are. Again, using help from the Williams Institute, I can break it down to where we know today, according to the 2010 census, there are roughly 60,000 of us folks. For this particular summit, we had a positive response of 140 people. But in reality, you're dealing with 60,000 of our community that we all need to be concerned about. And for us to be effective, there's two things we need to understand. There's 6 generations living today. We need to understand the traits of those generations. And the reason we need to understand those traits of those generations is how they can be served and how they can be engaged into the work that we're doing. And this should be somewhat entertaining too, because each of you will see your generation go by. We'll start with the GI generation, which is 1901 to 1926. And I'm showing you in each of these 6 living generations by the year, what year that entire group will have reached the age of 55. This is the generation that my grandparents were a part of, and it was the great one, the big one. And this is definitely the people that saved the world and built the nation as we know it. And again, a large portion of these are LGBT people. Then we move to the mature silent generation. All of that group will reach 55 or have reached it in the year 2000. These are the ones that survived the Korean War and the Vietnam War, or were lost in them. And then for this period too, they started the conversation of civil rights. And then you move into the baby boomers. All of those will reach 55 by the year 2020. And many in this room fall into this category. Our generation was the one that we thought we could save the world. We were accused in the 80s of being yuppies, and our nonviolence oftentimes led to violence. And it was our generation that started the conversation on gay rights and homosexuality and dealing with those social and health challenges. This is one of the largest generations in history. And then moving forward, the Generation X. These are the latchkey kids. We need, from the previous generation through the next, we need to engage these young people. All of these will reach 55 by the age, over the year 2035. And the difference in this generation, which I found interesting, is they want to save the neighborhood, they're not interested in saving the world. So we've got to give them manageable tasks to engage with. The Y generation, those will reach 55 by the year 2055. The Millennium generation is what they're also called, and these are a very proud group of young people. And you can see some of the characteristics of that. Their digital literacy is astounding. They grew up in that environment and they live in it, and that is the boundaries of their world. And then finally, the Z generation, any of those born after 2001. And what's interesting about this generation is our Hispanic population grows enormously. And in the past, where the common name was Smith, it will now become Rodriguez. On the age progression, what kind of problem are we looking at? You know, the most common remark you hear from someone in their 50s and 60s is, I had no idea that we would get here as quickly as we got here. Yeah, and you look back on it and you try to think, you know, what happened when I was in my 30s and 40s? So what I wanted to show here was when, just 5 years ago, when we took the 2010 census in the United States, if you were 30 years old, by the year 2025, you're going to be up to 45, and so you're now, how rapidly you're moving into the area where you need to be concerned. And the bottom numbers, what I've done is I've taken the U.S. Census from 2010, and if you'll remember that number of 60,000 in Dallas, according to the U.S. Census, we're going to climb up to 80,000, and at a peak in the year 2025 of 83, or 2030 of more than 83,000 LGBT falling into the senior just for Dallas. That's larger than Galveston, Texas. So again, there's 140 responded to this, but it's this 140 that will be the starting conversation to assist 84,000 people. So the problem is huge. But you know, the problem isn't only, in our community, what I have learned, it's not only the 65 to 90 who are marginalized. It's also the 0 to 18 that's marginalized. There was an organization in Dallas, and there still is, called Youth First Texas. And we were amazed through the past 10 years how much support this organization got. And I have spent a lot of time studying, just from a development perspective, of what is that phenomenon. And what it is we've all lived through that era. We know what it was like to be a youth and to be part of the LGBT community. And so we support it and we can engage. The part that we're driving into the unknown is the 65 to 90, the other end of the marginalized. I want to invite Miles Dean to come up and speak to us for just 1 minute. Come on, Miles. To represent the 0 to 18. I've told Miles that I would give him three of my minutes to let him represent the 0 to 18. 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay. I grew up in a small town called Cape on the shores of the Mississippi River in southeastern Missouri. It's a small town, and so, as can be expected, any mention of the gay agenda would strike silence and undertones of hatred into conversations, families, and schools. I grew up with the notion that being gay was not only wrong, but a terrible, horrible lifestyle to engage in. Naturally, as I grew up, I began to realize I wasn't like everyone else in liking the opposite gender, so I buried who I really was to become something I am not. I grew up living a lie. 3 years ago, I moved here to a suburb of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Ironically, my peers here in Texas were more accepting and tolerant than my peers from Missouri. From them, I learned that it is okay to be who I am, and that it's normal to like someone of the same gender. I've grown more as a person in the last 3 years here than I did in my entire time in Missouri. But I'm not alone in having a story like this, because many, if not most, queer individuals have had similar experiences, if not worse ones. As queer young individuals grow up, they face challenges and hardships that many of us are all too familiar with. Bullying, depression, domestic hardships, and other terrible detriments are faced much more often than our cisgender straight peers. As queer youth age into adults, the experiences they have had will shape them for the rest of their lives. Is it the responsibility of the LGBT community to support and provide for queer youth? We all strive to find people like us, and the adults have an entire portion of Dallas to call their own. In that slice of the pie, the majority of the shops and businesses are marketed to individuals that are at least 18 years of age. There is a stark lack of venues that is directed towards youth, or even just to people of any age. I turned 18 in 5 days. You might think that I'm excited to finally be allowed into some of those venues, and I probably will be. But I won't forget about the years that I spent feeling like an outsider from the LGBT community. Once I'm allowed to participate, I will not actively block out that time when I struggled as a teen like many of you have. I refuse to accept that I have to be a certain age to be a part of a community of people that any person should have belonged to from the moment that they began to assume an LGBT identity. This shouldn't be a rite of passage, and the pains that youth face at home and at school shouldn't be either. Especially considering that LGBT people cannot help that they are the way that they are, it is a travesty that the young people who are expected to carry on activism in the future are put at such a disadvantage by the people that are supposed to be helping them. It's appalling how much inequality exists within our population, a population that is constantly preaching a message of acceptance and tolerance. I don't want to be a part of a community that rejects me, and many of my peers already feel this way, which is a terrible detriment to the development of this movement's future. If the LGBT community doesn't already seem like less of a community to you, hear me out on this. Most every other social movement I have researched has accommodated youth. The civil rights movement did not block young black people from participating in its processes. Early feminist leaders surely wouldn't have blocked brave teenage girls from participating. Even most religions have programs for teens and youth to participate in. Since when does a young black person have to be of a certain age to become a part of the African American community? Since when does a young person have to be of a certain age to adhere to a religion? Since when do young women have to be 18 years old to become fully fledged feminists? Not only is the LGBT community exclusive, but it is also, oh man, sorry, page. But as a consequence, youth are left where they stand, alone, usually without the support of any facet of the LGBT population. This needs to change. This all needs to change. For the sake of the future of the LGBT rights movement, this needs to change. But I also know that this population has achieved great things in the past and will continue to do so, but not without some major changes. The work the LGBT movement has done to fight for the inclusion of GSAs at the high school level has been a phenomenal landmark. Allowing students to meet with one another is an invaluable gift. Teens are vulnerable. We cannot protect ourselves, and especially in Texas, the government that is supposed to ensure our safety is failing to do its job. Some of you might be thinking, you already have GSAs, isn't that enough for you? The answer is complicated. GSAs at the high school level are often extremely difficult to start, and once past administration, it is difficult to maintain a flawless record. Even if a GSA breaks even a minor rule, the school has the right to disband the organization immediately. In Texas, GSAs are often weakened by the immense pressure exerted by their hostile communities. And this makes us powerless. Especially as a lone organization with maybe only 10 members, GSAs are defenseless in a place where no one seems to be supportive. GSAs can only do so much to protect their own members and provide support, especially when meetings might only be held once a month. GSAs are a temporary and ineffective solution to the problems that teens face every day at home and at school. I was considering all of this during a drive with some friends when an idea struck me. Why not connect all of the GSAs together and work together to create change? So I sent out emails to GSA sponsors at multiple schools in the area, and eventually we held our first meeting. We call ourselves the Queer Youth Coalition of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we have already had encouraging discussions that have led to plans to create a directory of possible hosts for recently homeless youth, create online resources that are actually helpful for GSAs, and host events that are tailored specifically to queer youth, not just the adults who have the luxury of an established area. I believe most everyone here was once my age, and some of you may have bolted from your homes the moment you could, never looking back. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget about a childhood that is too full of bad memories. This is the problem. Growing up alone with no one to support you should not be a rite of passage that every queer individual must endure. The people we are supposed to be protecting and supporting shouldn't be afraid to go to school, and they shouldn't be afraid to speak up. I think a lot of you try to forget that you were once teens struggling to find a foothold, too scared to reach out to such an adult-oriented and ominous population. Whether or not you like it, LGBT youth exist. It is time for all of us to grow up and take care of the youth we have been neglecting. Together, we can change this community into a real one that actually supports all LGBT people, not just the ones who can legally gain entry into a bar or club. If we want to get the rights we deserve faster than we are now, the LGBT community needs to embrace its youth. If we cannot sustain ourselves and develop new leaders, this movement and even community will not accomplish the goals they were created with. And as much as I highlight the problems that youth ultimately face in being excluded from this community that is supposed to include them, I can only do so much to change what is happening right next door in all the neighboring cities of our area. Queer youth are struggling everywhere. We need people to help us grow and develop into the adults we will later become. We need the LGBT community just as much as all of you need it. We need help now. As the fight for marriage equality hopefully comes to a close, our next battle should not just be for the protection of our youth, but also for the education and support of our most valuable assets. Even in conjunction with whatever major issue we decide to pursue next, I plead with all of you to support the handful of organizations that do exist and to encourage the growth of new ones. The LGBT rights movement constantly needs invigoration, new ideas, and fresh faces. And just like any other movement, that will come from the youth in our communities. Young people in the LGBT community are an untapped resource, and in turn, the LGBT community has not been very accessible to youth. But there are organizations that are already making this change. Youth First, as has been mentioned, offers tremendous resources to LGBT youth who need a place to be themselves. Real Life Connection hosts an annual Teen Pride event geared towards high school students. And my organization, the Queer Youth Coalition, already supports GSAs through collective wisdom. Not only can these organizations be supported, but you can advocate for our rights at school too. The curriculum at our schools does not include equal representation of LGBT individuals. GSAs are constantly belittled by school administrations, and kids are still getting kicked out of their homes. The actions you take in elections and public policy will determine the fates of LGBT youth. Last year, I attended Dallas Pride with some of my younger GSA kids in tow, which was a mistake. I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with the hypersexualized, substance-ridden hookup harem that Pride seems to become annually. As we walked around the area, we not only felt threatened by the adult majority, but also unwanted. Eyes bored into our group wherever we went, but sometimes kind groups of people touted Happy Pride to us regardless of our age, or maybe they were too high or drunk to know the difference. Even though there were some kind people, the overarching message was clear. I felt terrible after dropping off my GSA kids when I realized what I had done. I'd shown them the face of what the majority of the LGBT community really is. But then again, I didn't sugarcoat it like a lot of activists do when they brag about the inclusive, accepting, and utopic LGBT community. Even as I graduated into adulthood, it is impossible for me to forget about my struggles as a minor. Queer youth should not be a taboo subject in the one place, the one community that is supposed to be the most accepting. There is a big disconnect between the people who need resources and the people who have access to them in the LGBT population, and supporting the youth of this community should be a priority, but it is not. We shouldn't age into or age out of a community based on an identity that we carry with us our entire lives. And if we're going to call ourselves a community, we might as well live up to that title. As our community ages and matures, we need to become more accepting and supportive of every queer individual, regardless of their age, because in our current state, we are self-inflicting wounds in our future with every passing breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. That is wonderful. According to the Happy Hippie Foundation, which is an organization founded by Miley Cyrus, there's 1.6 million of these young people homeless every year because of their orientation. I firmly believe for us to make progress in aging, we've got to couple the young with the old. These marginalized groups have got to come together. For any community, historically, since the humans have been on Earth, it's a coupling of the young and the old that takes us through this life cycle. We've got to find a way to do that. This is just a distribution. I mentioned to you, we're talking about 80,000 people. This is just a distribution of age. And I just wanted to show those higher brackets on these bar charts are totally relying on the huge population that's below them. My largest group there is the 40 to 49, but still, we've got to find, when you're having a conversation of aging, we've got to discuss this group and we've got to discuss the younger group as well. It's time that we rethink, our community has got to rethink how we do business. We have, for the last 35 years, we've been focused pretty much and solely on HIV and AIDS. The peripheral mission has been LGBT youth. We totally neglected, in my opinion, our transgender community. And the elders. Once you pass 55 years old, pretty much as Miles described to you, to the young people, they're discarded. There's not much use for them. So we've got to rethink this. For the past 35 years, we have become experts in dealing with the worst human health tragedy since we've been on this earth. And we're very good at it. That 35 years has paid off. If you think of 35 years of activating financial resources, activating organization, activating funding, yes, we lost so many people, and so many of us have devoted our lives to these things, but we're very good at it. Even the people who work to fight against us study how effective we are because we're that good at it. And it's time to start shifting that and rethinking. LGBT youth are more than 2 million minors that we are responsible for. And our transgender community, we sort of give it lip service. But we don't, as you age, that aging is even more complicated. But we have become experts in the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And according to the Internal Revenue Service for Dallas County, I found this astounding. Last year, $18 million in operating cost combined for nonprofit organizations who are supposedly serving the LGBT community report all of that, $18 million, as HIV and AIDS funding. And we're not talking about healthcare, we're talking about support to healthcare. None of it's reported as aging, none of it's reported as youth, and none of it's reported as transgender. Which means that there's huge funding available. In February, while I was at the White House, there was a representative of Housing and Urban Development that informed us that last year alone, there was $40 million left on the table for LGBT elder housing that was never claimed. So we've got to re-engineer how we're thinking this. And I'm not saying totally change our shift from HIV. I'm just saying, come back to what's the total scope of what we're attempting to do, and we need to become better at it. And if we do expand the scope, it's going to expand opportunity, it's going to expand funding, and it's going to fulfill many more of the requirements for the whole life cycle that we're attempting to address with these programs in Dallas. On the aging, it's been dubbed the Silver Tsunami. By the year 2030, there's going to be 92 million people who will be 60 and older. That's 1 in 4. 55% of them will be women, 31% are going to be ethnic minorities. And more than 5 million of those are going to be people like us. This is real. And it's time now to re-examine how we're approaching the issue and to get engaged. If you look through the year 2050, almost 25% are going to be 60 plus. 25% of the U.S. population, that's 1 in 4. So there's opportunity. There's opportunity to assist these people and to develop programs, to develop economic models. 18% of Americans have a comprehensive retirement plan. And almost 75% of the single Social Security recipients age 65, they totally depend on Social Security. And I'm sure you're aware of the conversation that constantly is going on of moving retirement age, or is Social Security solvent. These are real issues that the LGBT community is going to have to engage with. I was fortunate last week to sit through a parliament discussion in Australia with the Prime Minister. Australia's dealing with the very same thing. You've got people attempting to move a retirement age in order to address a cash flow and a cash balance situation. And unless we're better organized, people are going to be making decisions about investments that you've made over the last 40 or 50 years. This is helping or hitting our community even harder with our limited family structures, and children, and many of the other challenges that we've got. So we've all got to address it together. And in conclusion, I want to tell you that Silver Tsunami it's the most significant trend, looking back and looking forward. When you talk about 92 million people, that's huge. It's huge. So for today, I want you to engage in the topic. We've got breakout sessions. It's important that you choose, and Christian's going to walk us through that. Choose a breakout session where you think you can make a contribution. And then 2, the other speakers, the Bridge Building Network with Sharon Fine, Robert Emery with some housing options. We couldn't invite everyone, but we did invite a few that we thought could help us get the conversation started. And of course, Land Legal, because we need legal resources as we move through this as well. And Lambda has been such a huge part of building equality in this nation. And we need to tap into their resources, because you're going to get part of the help you need through, it's going to be a legal recourse. And then finally, I'm so grateful for Reverend Steve Sprinkle, who's going to drive this point home. We've got Barton. Research, the other part of the coalition that's so critical is research. You can't drive through the dark unless you've got a map, and that map for us is going to be through research. And so Barton Poche with the UNT is going to present the study that they're starting, and hopefully you'll sign up and engage with that as well. But I want it to be a good day, and like I've said before, we're not here with all the answers. We're only here to start a conversation and to keep you engaged as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Cannon. Also, thank you to Miles. If during that, Miles's portion of his talk, if you agreed with him, or you disagreed with him, I encourage you to find him and find the youth and go and have those discussions. Because if there's one thing that I know is that as you get older, whether or not things work or don't work as well as they used to, there is wisdom with experiences. And it will get lost if it is not shared. So please make sure to follow up and share the wisdom that I know that y'all have.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.